Well, let's get some more on this. I'm joined now by the Social Democratic Party's National Health spokesperson and doctor in infectious diseases, Dr. Ricardo Baptista Leite. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Leite. Thanks very much for being with us. How surprised were you by the UK government's decision yesterday to move Portugal off the green travel list?
Hello, and thank you for having me. It was an astonishing decision, truly, because there is no logical reason to have made the decision of blacklisting Portugal, especially when the government is using public health and positivity rates as their main metrics to make this decision. Because from the positivity rates, we've kept it constantly around 1% over the last weeks since we were green listed and now that we've been blacklisted again. And from a public health perspective, we've actually seen all of the hospital bed usage related to COVID-19 just going down. Looking back through these 3 weeks, what we have seen is that the UK government has decided to greenlist the coming of football fans, basically, to the Champions League final with 2 English teams, many of which, I'm sad to say, were true hooligans, but destroyed part of the city of Porto, where its citizens were actually complying very seriously with mask usage and all of the other safety measures because they went through such a terrible winter where we lost thousands of lives. And now that we've gone through this and we've kept our numbers stable, what we're seeing is that Portugal is being blacklisted, which means the elderly and the middle-class families from England are being blacklisted from having holidays in one of the most safest places, one of the safest regions in all of Europe, which is the Algarve, which has some of the lowest numbers. And so
it's interesting. So just let me come in on that. So if I understand rightly, what you're saying essentially is that yes, the UK government allowed travellers to come in. It so happened that because of the Football Champions League final, it was mostly football fans who went over to Portugal. And what you're saying is that you'd like to discern between the sort of type of UK traveller that comes to Portugal, because those particular travellers didn't adhere to the COVID regulations, as well as perhaps some of the other visitors that you might have had would have done. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. The high-risk travel is related truly to the football fans, where we know compliance to rules was not the reality. When we're talking about the Algarve, where we are speaking about most of the traveling coming to, we see that the numbers there in terms of COVID-19 are extremely low, and the people that are planning to come are mostly families that want to spend a week or 2 of well-earned vacations in a place where they want to comply with rules, and everything has been prepared to make sure that their travel arrangements and their vacations will be assured in a safe environment. And we have thousands of workers in the tourism sector that are suffering tremendously from this back and forth. And hearing the government pledge that this is a public health decision, when the idea here, as a doctor coming from infectious disease, to protect the NHS, to protect and save lives as a bottom line, we know that we cannot continue to use the metrics we used in 2020 blindly in 2021. And we know that with vaccination rate and also with high prior infection rates, that the situation is completely different. And you feel that, you see that in hospitals. So there are practicalities that need to be included, and that can be done. Instead of blacklisting and greenlisting every 3 weeks.
You talk about the government metrics, of course, and the UK government metrics very much was the data, the infection rate, which in Portugal has doubled since the last travel review 3 weeks ago. It's 5.4 new cases per 100,000 people per day in Portugal at the moment. That was, in the UK, that compares to 5.1. So it is greater than the UK's rate of infection at the moment. It sounds to me like what you're saying is, had this opening up of travel to Portugal happened after the Champions League final, perhaps there would have been a chance for Portugal to remain on the green list. I just want to move us on to the Portuguese economy. It relies enormously on tourism. How devastating is this going to be, this decision for Portugal this summer?
It's terrible. 14% of our GDP depends on tourism. And we're talking about entrepreneurs, businessmen, but also hardworking people, you know, Uber drivers, taxi drivers, hotel workers and staff. What we're seeing is that all of them and their families will be pushed away into unemployment and poverty due to many of these poorly made decisions, because honestly, and coming back to the solutions, we need to be practical, and putting countries on blacklist and green list every 3 weeks is not going to save these people from those poverty solutions. And so looking at what the UK did last year, for example, in Greece, where it was capable of looking at the country not as a whole, but making sure that the different regions were aimed in different ways. We could separate the islands of Portugal and even the Algarve and see those numbers and see that those numbers are among the lowest in all of the European Union. And so among the safest destinations for British citizens to come, it's actually safer to be in the Algarve than in many parts of the UK right now. And to not separate that, to make sure, to lead to the situation where our tourism economy is going to pay, especially in the Algarve, because of the rest of the country, because of infection rates that honestly, when we look at positivity rates, we do not see that same reflection. And especially when we look at hospital rate occupation, it is not reflected at all because there are other factors in play like vaccination. It is completely unfair. But we would be willing to even discuss other solutions like, for example, double testing, 72 hours before travel, along with the testing at checkout, or even discussing the possibility of just allowing tourism with visitors that have been priorly vaccinated. All of these solutions are out there. Science should be leading the political decision instead of just trying to make decisions on the fly that has led to a very difficult situation especially for the workers in the tourism sector. And of course, what we see is that many people may end up suffering, not out of the disease, but because of the cure that the UK government is trying to enforce.
Yes, science, of course, you say, and also it sounds like diplomacy. Do you think that the UK and the Portuguese governments have been coordinating, communicating well enough on this?
Well, clearly not well enough, because we should have a solution by now, and we're already almost a year and a half within this pandemic. It would be important that on both sides there could be strong and important conversations focused on the practicalities of how can we make sure that tourism continues to thrive. At the same time we keep both the local population but also our visitors, which we want to welcome to our country, as safe as possible, not only during their vacation but also going back home. Fortunately, today, we know what to do. We just need to make sure that our politicians and our governmental leaders are capable of doing so. On the Portuguese side, I am certain that the motivation is there because of the importance of tourism and because of the tradition of welcoming British citizens those who have come to Portugal know exactly how well we like to welcome them.
Just very quickly, I want to just finish on a point that you raised earlier. In your view, if the UK had delayed a little bit before opening up Portugal and in order essentially not to allow those 15,000 British football fans to go to Portugal, do you think we'd be in a better position? Do you think the UK, essentially, the UK government made a mistake in allowing those fans to go over to Portugal?
Well, listen, I can't scientifically say that the one thing is connected to the other because we still don't have that data. What I can tell you is that we, as a country, did everything in our power to make sure that the Champions League game was able to take place in Porto. Everything was done to make sure that it was organized in a safe manner, making sure that it was safe for everyone to visit. Unfortunately, some of those coming did not comply with the rules. Of course, that does have consequences. But despite all of that, we in Portugal want to continue to work with the British people and make sure that the British government understands that we are on the side of the solution. It is time that Boris Johnson, who I remind you, when he was in an ICU bed, he had a Portuguese nurse taking care of him, also could think about the people on the other side of the equation and how they are suffering and how we need to work together. Nobody will get out of this pandemic alone.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time. Dr. Ricardo Baptista Leite, the Portuguese MP and medical doctor in infectious diseases.